This year,
It takes about 50 seconds.
There you go.
to switch.
Yeah.
Okay,
I timed it this time.
Okay, welcome. We're back live. We're going to continue on with our work session. The first item, and I'll try to be as brief about as I can because I know we're getting deep into the night here, is the training procedures. What this is about is that we have certain criteria that need to be met for our committees and for elected officials, right? These are the workplace violence and the sexual harassment. I think there are like 4 different categories. The concern is that I think all of us have done our training, at least I hope so. I think CJ's department's done all their training or will. It is that some of these other committees that aren't town employees, they haven't. And how do we produce an awareness, a sense of urgency, that you have to be on, you have to get the training done, because now our town is going to be liable if something happens and you refuse to be trained and we didn't do anything about it. I don't want to say you will. I would like to say, will you? And then I'll say, will you again? The third time is you will, or you won't be on that committee.
Okay.
I don't know how to do this legally, if we can put that in a part of the policy, whatever, but I think from a town board, it is critical that these people get their trainings. And it shouldn't be up to the different department heads to hunt them down and do it or harass them or whatever. It's like, look, if you don't want to be on the committee, okay, there's certain criteria to be on the committee. And if you don't want to do it, we clearly understand that, but you can't be on that committee then.
Does everybody know going in?
My understanding was that people have been reached out to and been asked on certain committees if they've done that. We can send out an email stating that you have until the end of the year to get your training done.
Yeah, we got a new HR person.
She's only been here 4 days. Okay, let's let the dust settle. What I'm saying though is that she has to have some teeth because there's no policy.
Right, well, first off, aren't most people required to do both they're required to do the sexual harassment, isn't the workplace violence now required for all employees?
But also committee members.
No, just all employees.
Right, it's like 4 of them.
Well, I assume most of these people are employed somewhere, and their employer should be requiring them to do it too, so if they show.
Some people are retired.
Some are, but.
Yeah, you're right, Joe, in certain situations, but not everywhere. Like
Right.
in my company, we talk about it, but when I got 4 guys. So,
Right, what they can do is say, I went through this with my employer, and show that as well.
This is what Jenna does, right? This is part of her, because she is one we give that stipend to for the safety committee. And one of her jobs is, this is what Charmaine used to do, right? Because we were doing this by committee, basically HR, so we had and eventually that will go into the HR. But my point is that if they won't put any teeth behind it, is that you need to have this trained up at the end of the year, otherwise you will be removed from that committee.
I'm just saying, if they can show they did it with their employer, I think we should give them that option.
To your point, I've done this before when I used to work at a different job. They transferred over. I think Guy has done this before when he transferred over. I think there's a variety of other people who have done this. You're absolutely right. And that should be part of that conversation. I have no problem with that. Maybe they're not aware of it. But for other ones who haven't done it, and I'm not going to do it, now they may not have done it because they don't realize that they should do it. But I want to have some teeth for Jenna or for Mary Ellen to say, look, this really is important to us to do this. And if you choose not to do it, we understand. But then we will take you out that committee.
So can't we just have our next meeting, have a resolution to set this policy?
If you want to, keep in mind, I don't expect to ram it through today, but I want to plant the seeds for this to move forward.
Okay.
In the meantime, we'll send out emails again to all the people asking them and explain that if you've already been had on a different job, I used to print out the certificate and give it to the HR person, right? And it was in the file, so it shows that she can see you've been done. The same thing that they do with all the coaches and everything, right? I mean, we had them all here one night doing it. So this is not impossible to do. I don't want to be cruel, but on the other hand, I want to give them an opportunity to say, well, if you don't want to do this and you're aware of it, that tells me you don't want to be on the committee.
Well, it sounds like we need to have a more overall policy, because I'm sure there are other things that we ought to twist into this policy too, not just this, but saying, if you're going to be on a committee, you're going to do X, Y, and Z. And I don't have a list with me, I'm just saying, maybe we should be putting together an overall
Well,
policy.
once again, this is time sensitive, and now it's August.
I understand.
And if we do this in September, now they got 3 months.
I would do this one first, and then.
And then we can expand it.
Then expand it.
Just like we're doing with the COVID policy update down here, right?
Okay,
So we'll segue over into that one now. So I'll send out an email have Jenna send out an email asking people that have not done the training to please do it. It is critical that they do it. And at our next meeting, we'll have somebody else who can follow up with that.
okay,
Okay.
as long as that also says, if you've had it at another place.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
please-
yeah.
Absolutely.
Please give
Yep.
us that.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, so,
Point,
yes,
the trainings that I've been through in this regard were not proprietary, I guess they were to here. And I don't know if it was for town board members, planning board members, and so on. What if that doesn't equate to someone just saying their boss gave them a certificate?
well, their boss gave us a certificate that says they did it, we have to go by that. Usually, you print it out, it isn't a handwritten thing.
That's
Well,
right.
the boss did it, they may write, they may.
But does it go to the same extent as the other training?
It has to go to whatever the state criteria is for sexual harassment. They've got a certain criteria, you have to do X, Y, and Z, and I
But
don't know.
there's plenty of videos on this anyway.
And
Yeah,
usually you print out a certificate afterwards, or there's some sort of documentation.
I know.
I believe that they showed that you've done it.
But that was everyone on the town board, for instance, went through the same training procedure, the same training video, and the same training test. What if another one doesn't go in depth that far, or something like that?
Well, a lot of it is universal, because when I was.
I understand,
when I
I'm
was
just pointing that out.
Sure, I understand.
It could be a
Well,
lot.
then if it isn't up to what their level is, they'll have to take this one. And this one actually is offered online to do. It isn't like you've only missed so many scheduled days you have to be here. They can actually go online and do it. So all these things are done. And if someone says, for instance, I don't have internet where I am, okay, we can set up a time for you to come in here and you can watch it in the back. Where it's safe by yourself. There's a lot of ways we can accommodate you, but you have to be able to work with us. And for some of them, they may just be, I wasn't aware of it. Okay, now you are. How do we get you to yes? All right? Okay. So I'm going to segue over that into the COVID policy update that is being worked on. That was the fourth dot here. That's something we haven't come to the board yet, but okay, what do we do in the future if you now come down with Delta COVID, since you don't have the executive orders to follow? Is it still valid? When a guy and I were talking about this, it was like, okay, all the travel restrictions are, because that was the executive order, they don't want to reply. So how do we gear our policy to update? Okay, so we're on board with that. American Rescue Funds. When you look at your monthly reports, that we send out every month to you, HF, down at the bottom on the first page, ARPA funds. So we have received $407,974.13.
I was gonna ask what that was.
Now you know. Okay, that's the first tranche of money. We'll get a second one next year. We also, I think, sent you the coronavirus frequently asked questions. That shows you in here as far as what needs to be done, when we can and cannot. And at the end, I think on page 38, I'm only going to let you read this. We can talk about it next month. It says the interim final rule requires the cost be incurred by December 31st, 2024. We have time for this.
And it goes back to last March, not the previous year.
They go back to March of this year.
Of this year, not previous year.
No, this year. That's it. You can't go back any further. So all these things you've been asking people for, I'm going to do my apology tour to all the department heads. I've asked them to tabulate that. It doesn't apply. Doesn't apply. So it's March 31st. We have to do a report. Charmaine and I, mostly Charmaine, have to report. I think it's like in October this year where we are. Okay, so hypothetically, let's say the highway department can't pay $600,000 worth of roads this year, normally $400,000, right? Because of the extra $200,000, but maybe they can do it next year. That we can hold up some of this money until next year. In other words, we're not going to lose it if we don't distribute it this year. There is a sense of urgency, okay? Let's say, for instance, we get a number on the Salmon Creek, and we can combine that with other money to get the job done and farm it out. We could do that also with part of that, if you want to go that route. Maybe we use it for a water line like Consolidated Water District number 3, because the price has gone up $200,000 because of the pipe. Maybe we put some of that money towards infrastructure, but those bids will go out next year. We have until 2024 to do it, or not?
I have two questions. The first one is, do we have a taxing district issue with this money? Does it have to go to all of Lansing? Does it have to go to Lansing outside the village? Or does it have, or can it go to special districts, which is a smaller tax base?
Okay, so, Guy has researched this, I've asked him to research this, so Guy, I think you have an answer for this?
I do? No. So there's not clear and definitive guidance on that question. However, the state comptroller hasn't taken a contrary position, and the general position that's been accepted, for lack of a better term, not just by New York, but by most states, and which both the Association of Towns Council and NICOM Council tend to agree with, is that because there is a federal law authorizing it, that therefore you don't run into that problem. The federal law actually preempts the state law on that question, and the town can use it for a part-town benefit as long as it meets the infrastructure requirements, and it's not payment of an existing debt, it's actually payment for new infrastructure. So in other words, we couldn't use it to retire debt of the Consolidated Water District, because that's not the point of the law. But we could use it to build District 3, or to upgrade a water tower, or to even connect the Atwater Road connection that was a big issue. As long as you're building something, creating employment, creating infrastructure that will protect people against the next crisis, be it the Lambda variant or the murder hornet variant, whatever it is. They're looking, the federal law is that water and sewer and other critical infrastructure is a very effective tool to fighting these types of problems. And so that's what they're supplying. So the question comes down to how the town board wants to use the money, and if it wants to authorize it to go to one particular district or one particular project, it can do so as long as it meets the federal rules, because the federal rules have preempted individual state rules on this type of issue. That doesn't mean that the comptroller won't issue an opinion on this, or there won't be subsequent legislation before the next pile of money comes out. As of right now, we can do it. I think we just have to be flexible. It's sort of like certain types of tax transactions and exchanges. Have at least two plans, so if one of them doesn't pan out, you've got a plan B.
Right, and my next question is, can we do something similar to what the county did, which is flush this through projects so that we don't have the restrictions on the money that the feds do?
Right. Use it all for qualified purposes now.
Right, that work, even if we got them in our budget, and then set that money aside and have more flexibility as to how we spend it afterwards.
For lack of a better term, and not to suggest chicanery, shell game it. Spend it now, but don't take the money that you had earmarked for that spending out of your budget and put that towards some other project.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's perfectly legal as long as it meets the federal rules.
Why don't we pursue that avenue? And maybe make a decision at our next board meeting, or at least have a discussion before we move forward on that.
I agree.
Because that gives us flexibility.
Well, the one flexibility it might not give us is putting it in water districts, because then we'll be up against that rule of using one taxpayer's money for another. So I think we've got two different trenches that we need to follow on this, because I understand, especially the one water district in which the price just doubled because of materials. That I can see that as being a very good use of this money. But if we launder it through highway stuff, we won't be able to do that.
Why don't we see if we can, for lack of a better term, laundry the first tranche, see how we go. And then maybe because this other district, because it is a health concern, they're doing the survey now. Next, won't go out to bid until early next year, if any, okay? That's the earliest, so we have time to see with the second.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
and that's, I think, as long as it's legal, and as long as we aren't on the hook to reimburse them because, right? And hopefully Guy can dig into this thoroughly to make sure that we're on the right road.
Yeah, I mean, as of right now, you certainly could do it. Just understand that the actual regulations implementing this thing are about, I forget exactly, but it's something ridiculous like 1,200 pages. So most of it doesn't apply to towns. A lot of it is federal, military spending, foreign aid, stuff like that. But if they don't change the rules between the first, I don't know what word they're, tranche.
Yes.
If
It's a French name.
If they don't change the rules between the first pile of money and the second pile of money,
Yes.
you can do it. Allocation.
So why don't we just be proactive about this, because we don't know if the portal's gonna be in there next time or not. And also, let's ask Guy to look into that now as opposed to a month from now before our next meeting, an hour before our next meeting, and do it if you could pursue that, if we're all in agreement to have.
Right. I will also say that I'm concerned that we fell behind in highway last year because we were being prudent. And I want to use some of this money to catch back up again.
All right, that's the DB fund,
That's, yeah.
which is a special district, right? It's
Right.
part,
But
town. So if we pay, let's say hypothetically, okay, whoever's listening, it's all hypotheticals, right? If we pay down something in a DB, that frees up other money to do something in the future, like road maintenance, because he may not have $600,000 worth of paving this year,
right,
but he will next year.
right, I'm just saying, it's very appropriate to put it in the B fund because the village is getting its own chunk of money.
Well, B or DB, they're both in that, they're all.
Well, I'm just saying, putting it in the B fund, either, if we're putting it in the.
Well, then you got it in the planning code, is all you have, right?
Right, I understand,
mean,
I'm just saying, DB, I'm just saying B is opposed to A,
No, you're right, as long as you keep it in, not townwide,
Right.
but, town outside the village.
It's more appropriate because the village is getting its own chunk.
I think you're at 6, I'm at half a dozen.
Okay.
All right. That's all I had here. I think this has been a great game plan, really, to move forward on this. And now let's go on to the RA zoning district changes. CJ, you want to take the ball with this one?
Sure, and this is not meant to be an extended conversation, but I did want to let the town board know that essentially now I have the opportunity to execute our land use policy work program, right? So now development review and a host of other things have been taken over by John Zipko, your planner, who's settling in quite nicely into a variety of tasks. So now I have the opportunity to go through the piles of documentation that were left to me from the prior planner, prior consulting planner, Mike Long, and to compile both the recommendations from the planning board and committee, as well as the recent zoning audit that we did fairly laboriously, and essentially turn those into some kind of low, medium, hanging fruit, move those forward and start discussing with those in earnest with the planning board at their working meeting on September 13th, along with the short-term rental regulations that have been discussed by this board. The planning board has recommended something of a light touch so far. As I'm hearing, we discussed the general scope of work with them in mid-August at their working meeting. And my understanding from talking to them is that they are looking to get these properties registered and verified that the life safety elements of essentially hosting are in place. The beauty of this is that the county has generously is funding a platform, an online platform that monitors and provides other analytics of short-term rentals. And so we can actually go in and see who's registered, who's complying. We see it as I kind of see it at this point as extra zoning, meaning not within the zoning, but a kind of standalone chapter of short-term rental regulations enforced by the code enforcement officer. We collect a fee and we're on our way. Now that said, I've circulated a draft to Guy to this effect, but of course, he's been busy and I said, get me some comments when you can, maybe at the end of next week. But the short of the long is that I don't think we necessarily need to do, dozens of pages on short-term rentals. I think that we can keep it to life, health, and safety. Kind of dovetailing into this is, one of the concerns I have about having put the land use policy work program off for so long is that I don't want zoning changes to be turning into these kind of monumental events. I want to make sure that we are regularly, and I mean quarterly, generally speaking, making sure that we're continuously addressing zoning updates in concert with a comprehensive plan. And to this end, I've been working just a little bit with Jenna, who's our website czar, because I think ultimately I think some of the crux of problems revolving around miscommunication relative to anything from zoning to major projects in the town is that we don't have a good outlet for news right now. So Lansing Star is gone, and that has left a huge communication void in the town. And I know that this is a little bit off scope, but I think that me even just doing small cooperation with Jenna to get the new website launched. I think she's going to be coming to you with more information about that soon. Will really help people understand both the scope of zoning changes we're working on, projects like the highway building renovation project, the Salmon Creek project. Like, there's so many cool projects and things happening in the town, but that and even things that are going to be imposed on us, right? Like I was just saying about the solar projects, right? These are massive projects, but we don't really have any really concise way to get word out to people. So I know that's a bit extracurricular from the RA discussion, but in some ways it's not, because I think, you'll hear something like a rumor of, there's another Dollar General store, and I get dozens of emails, you get dozens of emails, but for something that's not, I think to call it conceptual would even be a stretch, right? So I think having this platform to get more information to people quickly and concisely will really help us continuously make zoning and other kinds of regulation changes that people can see, they're obvious, and are pretty straightforward. So in any event, I anticipate Q4 of this year is really being a full court press on our working meetings to get going on finishing short-term rentals, which I expect that will come to you pretty quickly. I'm hoping in September, and then getting RA and the ag zone on their way, maps made, edits in front of you. I'm hoping for December, along with the cannabis decision that you'll have to make at your December 15th meeting.
Has there been any,
long run on Sunday?
speaking of cannabis, has there been any recommendation from the subcommittee on?
Yes, there is a working group who at present, and I haven't had a chance to follow up with them on this yet, but the recommendation thus far has been to opt out and kind of wait to see what happens. Future town boards can always opt in. I mean, you could opt in at any time in the future. But if there's more guidance we need to be able to make this decision, I don't know that I have a ton of really accurate, let's say, revenue projections relative to this particular issue. So I think, and who really does? I mean, there's no, this is not a legal business in New York State right now. So,
personal opinion, I'll put it to the board here. This should not be driven by money as a revenue stream. It should be other reasons why we're doing this, and the revenue should be a secondary benefit. I think we should do, because we have time to opt in later, we can watch this closely. I know this is kind of like sales tax, but I don't think we're going to get 1.5 million from this like we did sales tax. So let's see how this goes. Let's do the second mouse. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see where this goes, but we can track the data. But I think for us, it's already been spoken that we should ban it from any town land. Right, just like smoking, it should be on town property. You can't do whatever cannabis, whatever form it is, on town property, how do you prove that or not. But anyways, I don't want to get in the weeds about this, but the thing I would ask though is this website we want to do, if you could have another person trained besides Jenna, because And I'll see if that's something that can be done in the rec department, because Jenna may be out for a little while. So we'll see.
Yes, she had spoken about kind of, we just talked a little bit about a timeline for maybe getting department head input, and then also trying to, get a site out there that's user-friendly for all the departments. And it's not necessarily that I want us to be taking on a website, of revamping per se, but my understanding is Dan is retired. It's pretty cumbersome to make changes to the existing website. And I grow more concerned every day that I'm not able to share information with people as readily as I might like to. Now that said, I understand that, I'm one person and I want to be aware of stretching too thin. And so to that end, I do just want to mention, I have reached out to county planning about a number of initiatives as part of the this coming year's work plan. So, and again, yes, it's not necessarily related to RA zoning, but it's going to impact that area. We know that there's 2 utility scale solar projects coming in. We know that there's probably going to be a significant amount of money given to a local agency account, probably split between the towns of Lansing and Groton. I've asked county planning to help us. So when the exhibits become available for these projects, I'm going to ask county planning and their flanks of planners to help us sit down and make productive comments on those applications. Because we're not going to be able to do that amidst everything else we have going on. So Terry Carroll's the new Chief Sustainability Officer for the county. I reached out to him. He said, send me things to put on the county's work plan for the coming year. So I just wanted to let you know that we are utilizing and mobilizing every resource we have available to us, because we anticipate that they are going to get their funding in Q4 of this year. Basically, when we find out about the CFA, they're going to find out about that money that they're asking for from NYSERDA. They're then going to turn around and pretty much immediately put in an application to the Office of Renewable Energy Siting, like probably Q1 of 2022. And if it goes anything like the Morris Ridge project, which, as you know, is 177 megawatts in Livingston County in town Mount Morris, that went from January 12th was their application to ORES, and they were just issued a study permit in June. So in under 6 months, they went from application to full approval of a 177 megawatt project. So we need to be ready to act. And so that's why I'm trying to marshal these resources now to make sure there's as many competent planning eyes on these documents as we can possibly get. So I'm just kind of putting that out there, because that's going to largely affect the zone that we know as RA. And also related news to RA, but kind of RA adjacent. NYSERDA just issued their Just Transition Site Reuse Planning Program, and so I've asked County Planning to help coordinate with Cuba Operating Company, Ithaca Area Economic Development, and the Lansing the Lansing Advisory Committee on the Power Plant Future, LAP, PPF, as they were. There's a pot of money, about $150,000 initially, available for site planning work, like baseline planning tasks, as well as pre-development planning tasks for the power plant. So Milliken Station, right? What's going to happen to it? Great question. So there's money available to help answer that question. And so it appears that Ithaca Area Economic Development may be taking some of the lead in cooperation with Cuba Operating Company. But we are, I think, the only agency really with land use authority in the matter. And so I have asked or requested, voluntold, that we have a seat at that table. And so I'll be talking with them tomorrow morning, actually, about trying to figure out what goes into getting that shovel ready. So there's a lot of things happening in that area of town. And so I understand that we really want to drill down into this RA zoning and the ag zones and get those cleaned up basically as quickly as humanly possible, but also in an orderly fashion in concert with the comprehensive plan. So that's it.
Any questions for CJ?
That's a lot.
Sounds like a lot of work, CJ.
Well, she's rested.
Yeah.
There's somebody else who's doing the planning board meetings now.
Oh, yeah.
How many more meetings is Jonathan doing? He's doing 2?
yeah, he's taken over zoning board and planning board, basically in their totality, and so by taking, and he loves construction and pre-construction and really everything to do with construction, so, I think we're gonna be, it really frees me up to think about some of these broader issues, while also, bringing his map, skills, expertise to bear. The one thing I didn't mention is that we do want to pursue a GIS strategy for the town. I understand that that's going to be a little bit larger, shall we say, the scope of work, but I think we kind of almost have to do that as we move forward with better asset management. It seems like there's major changes in the highway department. This could be a significant opportunity for us to work closely together on how to, there's so many applications for this, as we well know. But I do want to say one of the other things that Conservation Advisory Council is doing, which we've spoken about them a bit tonight, but I do want to mention that they are still working on some clean energy communities and climate smart communities work, which includes, NYSERDA has asked us to consider doing a demand response community campaign, so to help encourage people to sign up to allow their thermostats to be controlled remotely when there's a peak, so that they can kind of shave some of the load off of the grid. So that's one piece I'd like them to consider, but one of the significant pieces moving forward for them is an open space index, which hopefully will dovetail with that conservation easement program that we had, the cart is a bit before the horse, but my intention from there is to, get them busy on the Environmental Protection Overlay District work plan, the open space index. I'd like to apply to the Park Foundation, just like I did for the town center studies. Have that paid for, possibly, if graciously, by Park Foundation, and so that we can start to essentially prioritize larger areas to be able to acquire conservation easements, either by the town, Finger Lakes Land Trust, whoever. We can work with any number of bodies to make that happen. So yeah, that's a very long-winded work plan, but essentially you'll be seeing that coming up in the 2022 work plan we're working on right now for planning. And so, yeah, you'll have that along with the budget pretty soon.
The situation that's brought to us tonight on the permanent floor is a little bit disheartening. If it's, people gathering till 11:20 at night, is there, I wonder, a way, let's just take it one step at a time, reach out to the landowners who rented out that facility, I believe, and make them aware of this situation, and see if they can perhaps self-govern it. And I don't know if that's something that, who should write the letter, but it's something from the town board. I don't want to make this an official thing yet. On the other hand, I want them, maybe they're not aware of it.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
And I don't know who would reach out to them for that, to say that. I don't even know who the landowner is.
Is it a rental or is it the landowner doing the party? I don't know that either.
No, we don't know.
And I don't know who
Yes,
would, maybe rec department know who that is. Maybe Pat would know if it's, is it the,
It's the Watson Turf,
is it the soccer field up here that did it?
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's the address.
Yeah.
That's the address.
Yeah.
So maybe the owners should be made aware this is the tenant, the renters, unless they intend for them to do that at night. It's a little bit, well, it's a little less upsetting to the homeowner right there. I mean, one thing Salt Point Brewery said, if we have outside entertainment, we'll shut it down at 10 o'clock.
Well, the planning board tends to ask that of everybody who's doing event-like things, is say, let's pick a time that you're gonna shut things down because you've got neighbors who've got to go to sleep.
I don't want to go there, but in Hugo County, like when they have certain bands in certain areas, they shut down at 10 o'clock. And I hate to be that person, but if we're having these situations happen, I don't know if we can. I don't want to be the first option. On the other hand, if we have more and more residents that want to be in open spaces and they can't get the peace and quiet they want, because we should probably have that thorough discussion maybe at our next meeting Any questions, Eric? I need to go into executive session for a few minutes.
Oh, that was a lot. so.
I am looking forward to you moving into your new position because right, we've needed that for so long and I know you were trying to do too many hats and
Lots of them.
Well, I'll just say, as someone who has been suggesting e-pods for way over a decade, I'll be happy to see something move there.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
E-pods, environment protection overlay districts.
Thank you.
That ties really well into what Liz was talking about earlier with some of the creeks and some of the
Well, we're
wetlands.
making progress.
Yeah.
Let's keep moving forward, right? Like a centipede, keep moving forward.
I'm a little faster than something.
Let's put a saddle on and go. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you also, Jesse. We're going to move into, I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session.
Second.
This pertains to a potential lawsuit.
Okay,
Second.
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, and Andrew seconded. Yeah. You just need to jot it down and then Guy will put it on from there.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Opposed?
But
We're getting good at this.